Lena woke up to the sound of her baby crying. The morning light barely peeked through the curtains, but Owen was already hungry and fussy. She rubbed her tired eyes, feeling the ache in her back and the tension in her shoulders. Being a single mom was never easy, and some mornings felt like a mountain she had to climb before the day even began. She picked up Owen from the crib, rocking him gently while humming a soft tune. His little hands clutched her fingers, and she felt a mixture of love and exhaustion. Lena had barely slept because she had spent the night planning how to manage the week ahead. Bills, work, and basic necessities for Owen all weighed on her mind. She had just enough formula left for 2 more feedings, and she worried about how she would get more in time. Money was always tight, and she often found herself calculating every expense, sometimes twice, just to make sure they wouldn't go without. After changing Owen's diaper and getting him dressed, Lena hurried to prepare breakfast. She was trying to juggle everything at once, making oatmeal for herself while warming milk for Owen. The smell of oatmeal and the sound of Owen cooing for more milk filled the small apartment. Lena sat him on the kitchen counter, holding the bottle in her hand, and fed him slowly, watching his tiny face light up with each sip. Even in her fatigue, moments like this reminded her why she worked so hard every day. Once Owen was fed, Lena quickly got herself ready for work. Her boss had been strict lately, and she couldn't afford to take a day off. She dressed in the simplest outfit that looked professional and packed her bag with lunch and documents for the day. With Owen in his stroller, she headed out the door, feeling the weight of the world on her shoulders but determined to face it head on. While waiting for the bus, Lena's phone buzzed. She quickly glanced at it, seeing a message from her best friend. She had been texting her friend about the struggles of keeping up with everything, about bills, work, and especially about Owen's formula. She wanted to vent and get advice, maybe even some support, but in her rush, Lena's finger slipped on the touchscreen and she accidentally sent the message to someone else entirely, her ex-boyfriend, Ethan. Ethan had been out of her life for years. They had shared a past that was significant, full of love and mistakes, but their paths had diverged. Lena had moved on, at least in her mind, focusing on raising Owen and building a life she could be proud of. Ethan, on the other hand, had become a recluse of sorts, a billionaire with resources and a life so different from hers that contact had been nearly impossible. The thought of him seeing a text meant for a friend, something so raw and personal, made Lena's heart race. She tried to delete it instantly, but it was too late. The text she had sent was simple, desperate, and real. "I don't know how we'll afford formula this week." As soon as it was sent, panic set in. Lena's fingers trembled as she stared at the screen. She imagined Ethan reading it and judging her, or worse, feeling annoyed or indifferent. She thought about all the things she could have said differently, how she could have phrased it to her friend but not to him. Her mind raced with embarrassment, regret, and fear, and she felt a familiar knot in her stomach tighten. For a moment, Lena wished she could disappear. She imagined running into the apartment building and never stepping out again. She imagined all the worst-case scenarios playing out in her head. But there was no undo button, no way to take it back. She just had to wait, and that was the hardest part. She held Owen close, trying to calm her own nerves while keeping him happy and distracted. Minutes passed, and Lena's phone remained silent. She wondered if Ethan had even seen the message, if he had ignored it, or if he was annoyed. Her thoughts spiraled. She remembered the past. How Ethan used to be thoughtful, how he had a good heart, but also how unpredictable he could be when it came to personal matters. She braced herself for a cold, distant response, one that would remind her why they hadn't worked out in the first place. Then, her phone buzzed. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. She picked it up cautiously, afraid of what she would see. The message was from Ethan. Lena's fingers hesitated over the screen. She hadn't expected him to respond at all, let alone so quickly. When she finally opened it, her eyes widened in surprise. It wasn't the reaction she had feared. Instead of anger, irritation, or silence, Ethan's message was direct, concerned, and oddly warm. He asked about Owen, about the formula, and how she was managing. He wanted details, as if he genuinely cared. Lena blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry. She wasn't used to receiving kindness from him anymore. The next part of the message shocked her even more. Ethan said he would transfer money to help her immediately. Lena's mind struggled to comprehend what she was reading. Money had never come easily to her, and $1 million was more than she had ever seen in her life. She stared at the screen, thinking it must be a mistake, a joke, or a scam. She was cautious, skeptical, and overwhelmed. She felt a mix of emotions: gratitude, disbelief, fear, and curiosity all at once. As she sat there holding Owen, Lena thought about the past they shared. She remembered small details like how he used to know exactly what Owen needed even before she said anything, how he remembered her preferences and little routines. The part of his message that mentioned choosing the right formula for Owen touched her deeply. It showed that he still remembered, still cared in a thoughtful, practical way. Lena felt a pang of old feelings she hadn't acknowledged in years, feelings she wasn't sure she wanted to confront right now. Her thoughts shifted to the practical side. If the money was real, it could change everything. She could pay off bills, secure a stable home for Owen, and ensure he never went without. But she also worried about what accepting it would mean. Would it change their dynamic? Would she lose her independence, her sense of pride, her ability to provide for Owen on her own? The questions were endless, and each one felt heavier than the last. Lena spent the rest of the morning in a fog. She got Owen ready, fed and dressed, then took him to daycare. Her mind barely focused on the streets, the people, or the sounds around her. Every step felt surreal, as though her life had shifted in an instant without warning. She tried to focus on work, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Ethan's message, to the money, to the thoughtfulness that had accompanied it. It was more than just a financial gesture. It felt like a bridge back to a part of her past she hadn't realized she missed. By the time Lena returned home that evening, she had made a cautious plan. She would verify the money first, make sure it was legitimate, and then decide how to respond. She didn't want to rush into anything. She also wanted to understand Ethan's intentions. There was something deeper in his message than just financial help, something human and real that went beyond money. That night, as Lena rocked Owen to sleep, she reflected on the strange twist of fate. A simple mistake, a misdirected text, had opened a door she never expected to revisit. She felt a mix of fear and hope, a sense that life sometimes had its own way of testing resilience and generosity. Lena knew the next days would be crucial, that she would have to navigate her emotions carefully, and that the choices she made could change the course of their lives. But for the first time in a long while, she also felt a flicker of relief, of possibility, of hope that things could get better, not just for her, but for Owen too. As she placed Owen in his crib and watched him drift off, Lena felt her heart swell with love and protectiveness. She also felt a strange sense of anticipation for what was coming. The world outside might be uncertain, full of challenges and surprises, but in that small apartment holding the child she loved more than anything, Lena felt a quiet strength. She knew she could face whatever came next, even if it started with a text sent by mistake. The next morning, Lena woke up with a mix of nerves and curiosity. Her mind was replaying Ethan's message from the night before over and over. She still couldn't believe what had happened. A misdirected text, something so small, had led to a response she never expected. The part that shocked her most wasn't the money. It was the thoughtfulness, the care in his words, the way he remembered even the little details about Owen. She felt a strange warmth in her chest, a flicker of hope she hadn't felt in years. Lena sat at the small kitchen table, Owen in his high chair, and scrolled through her phone again. She double-checked her bank account. Sure enough, the money was there. $1 million transferred instantly, no questions asked. She stared at the numbers, her mind racing. Was this real? Was there a catch? Could a person really just do something like this out of kindness? She felt a wave of emotions: shock, gratitude, fear, and even guilt. She had spent years working hard to make ends meet, stretching every dollar, and now suddenly this enormous sum was at her fingertips. She wondered what Ethan's motives were. Was he lonely? Was he testing her? Or was this truly an act of care? A gesture to help her and Owen without expecting anything in return? The question swirled, but she knew she couldn't dwell too long. She had to think about what to do next, how to handle this responsibly. After feeding Owen and getting him ready for daycare, Lena called her best friend. Her hands trembled slightly as she recounted the events. Her friend was as shocked as she was, alternating between exclamations of disbelief and concern. "Are you sure it's real?" her friend asked. "It sounds crazy. Have you checked if it's a scam?" Lena reassured her that she had verified the account, confirmed the transfer, and even checked with the bank. Everything was legitimate. The money was truly there. Her friend was supportive but cautioned Lena to be careful. This was a life-changing amount of money, and she needed to think carefully about how to use it. Lena agreed, though her heart felt lighter knowing someone else was aware and understanding her situation. Throughout the day at work, Lena's mind wandered. She tried to focus on her tasks, but the memory of Ethan's message kept creeping back. She remembered the small personal touch in his words about Owen, the advice about formula, the concern that felt genuine rather than obligatory. It was strange to think about someone from her past, someone who had once been close and now distant, reaching out in such a meaningful way. She wondered what had prompted him, what had made him take this step. And more importantly, she wondered how she felt about it. By lunchtime, Lena realized she had to respond, not just to acknowledge the money, but to communicate her gratitude, her feelings, and her questions. She drafted a message carefully, unsure of how formal or casual to be. She wanted to express thanks without sounding overly emotional or dependent. She wanted to convey that she appreciated the gesture, but also valued her independence. After rereading it several times, she finally hit send. Her heart raced as she waited for a reply. Though she tried not to stare at her phone constantly, Ethan's response came quickly. Lena was surprised by his calm and reassuring tone. He explained that he had been thinking about Owen, about her, about how life could be unpredictable and challenging, and that he wanted to help without complicating her life further. He emphasized that the gift was meant purely as support, with no expectations attached. And again, he included a practical note about Owen's nutrition, showing that he remembered details from the past and cared about them in the present. Lena felt a strange combination of relief and wonder. This wasn't manipulation. It wasn't a business deal. It was kindness, unexpected and genuine. After work, Lena spent the evening thinking about how this sudden wealth could change her life. She made a list of immediate needs, bills to pay, debts to clear, essentials for Owen, and long-term goals, like savings for education, a better home, and some stability she had never been able to afford before. Each item she wrote brought a mix of excitement and responsibility. This money could change everything, but it also came with a weight she hadn't experienced before. She felt an urgency to be smart, to make thoughtful decisions, and to ensure that her choices reflected her values. As night fell, Lena tucked Owen into bed and sat beside him, holding his tiny hand in hers. She thought about how different life could be now, how possibilities she had only dreamed about were suddenly within reach. Yet she also felt a deep responsibility to remain grounded, to keep her focus on raising Owen with love and care, and not let money change the essence of their life. She realized that while wealth could provide comfort and opportunities, it couldn't replace the human connection, the small moments of joy, or the sense of purpose she found in being a mother. Over the next few days, Lena began to explore her options carefully. She consulted a financial advisor to understand the best ways to manage the money responsibly. She researched investments, savings plans, and even charitable opportunities. She wanted to make sure that her newfound resources could provide security for Owen, but also be used in ways that made a meaningful impact. It was a learning process, one that combined practical decision-making with personal reflection. Lena felt empowered yet humbled, aware that this was more than just money. It was a tool for building a better life. In the evenings, Ethan continued to check in. His messages were thoughtful and considerate, not intrusive. He offered advice about parenting, asked about Owen's milestones, and shared small tips he remembered from the past. Lena began to see him in a new light as someone who, despite wealth and distance, still cared deeply and thoughtfully. Their communication felt natural and human, not forced or transactional. Lena found herself looking forward to the messages, to the connection, and to the reassurance that came from knowing someone was paying attention in a kind and meaningful way. One evening, Lena reflected on the irony of it all. A simple mistake, a text sent to the wrong person, had changed her life in ways she couldn't have imagined. It had reminded her that life could be unpredictable, that generosity could come from unexpected places, and that human connection was often more valuable than anything else. She felt gratitude not just for the money, but for the reminder that people could care, that help could come without strings, and that life had the capacity for surprises that brought hope. Lena's thoughts also turned to her past with Ethan. She remembered moments of laughter, support, and shared dreams. She realized that those memories were not just nostalgia. They were reminders of the human capacity for care and empathy. She didn't dwell on what had gone wrong before. Instead, she focused on the present and the possibilities for the future. She knew that the relationship they had now didn't need to mirror the past, but it could still be meaningful in its own way. By the end of the week, Lena felt a sense of stability she hadn't experienced in years. The money had been allocated wisely. Her immediate worries about Owen's needs were resolved, and she had begun to think about longer-term goals. More importantly, she felt a renewed sense of confidence and hope. Life was still challenging, still full of unknowns, but she had resources, support, and a renewed perspective that allowed her to face each day with determination and courage. That night, as Lena watched Owen sleep, she felt a quiet sense of peace. The events of the week had taught her that life could surprise her in unexpected ways, that human kindness could come in forms she never anticipated, and that a simple mistake could lead to profound change. She felt grateful for the connection, the generosity, and the new possibilities that had opened up. And as she held Owen close, she whispered a promise to herself and to him that she would use this gift wisely, live fully, and cherish the moments that truly mattered. Lena had spent the weekend reflecting on everything that had happened. The sudden turn in her life had left her feeling both excited and overwhelmed. She had made some plans for Owen and herself, allocating the money wisely for essentials, a stable home, and future savings. But she knew there was more to consider beyond the practical side. She had to navigate the emotional and relational implications of Ethan's unexpected gesture. Monday morning arrived, and Lena was more alert and thoughtful than she had been in weeks. She had spent time over the weekend reviewing her priorities, listing out what was truly important. Beyond bills and necessities, she wanted to ensure that Owen's childhood would be filled with stability, opportunities, and love. The money could provide that security, but she realized that it couldn't replace the patience, care, and attention she gave every day. She felt a renewed sense of purpose, understanding that wealth was a tool, not a solution in itself. During the day, Lena noticed subtle changes in her mindset. Even small tasks that previously seemed stressful now felt manageable. Picking Owen up from daycare, she noticed the way he ran to her, his laughter bright and genuine. She realized that moments like this were the true wealth of her life, and no amount of money could replace them. Yet she also appreciated that the resources now available to her could enhance these moments, making their life smoother, less stressful, and more joyful. Later that day, Lena decided it was time to respond to Ethan in more depth. Their messages over the past few days had been supportive, thoughtful, and human. But she wanted to communicate openly. She wanted to express her gratitude, share her reflections, and ask questions about his intentions. She took a quiet moment at her desk, composing a message that balanced appreciation with honesty. She wanted him to know that she recognized his generosity, but she also valued her independence and wanted clarity. Ethan responded thoughtfully, acknowledging her concerns and emphasizing that his gesture was meant purely as support, not control. He expressed that he remembered the challenges she faced as a single parent and wanted to help in a meaningful, non-intrusive way. Lena felt a deep sense of relief. His response confirmed what she had started to believe, that this wasn't about ego or control, but about genuine care. As the week progressed, Lena found herself thinking more about the past she had shared with Ethan. She remembered their time together, the laughter, the shared dreams, and even the arguments that had once seemed insurmountable. She didn't dwell on what had gone wrong, but instead focused on the human connection they had built, and the ways it could evolve now. She realized that people could change, circumstances could shift, and relationships could take new forms without erasing the past. Meanwhile, Ethan continued to check in, not excessively, but with a quiet, consistent presence. His messages were filled with thoughtful questions about Owen, practical advice, and occasional reflections on parenting challenges he remembered. Lena began to appreciate this consistent kindness, recognizing that it wasn't just about the money but about showing interest and care. She felt her initial fears and skepticism fade, replaced by trust and an understanding that genuine connection could exist beyond romantic or transactional boundaries. One evening, Lena decided to take a step further. She invited Ethan to a neutral location for a brief meeting. She wanted to see him, to confirm that the messages reflected a real person and to understand his intentions more clearly. She felt nervous, uncertain of what the encounter might bring, but also hopeful. She wanted to navigate this carefully, ensuring that any interaction would prioritize Owen's well-being and her own sense of autonomy. The meeting was brief but meaningful. Lena noticed the subtle signs of care in Ethan's demeanor, how he spoke about Owen, how he listened, and how his expressions reflected genuine concern rather than obligation. They spoke about practical matters, shared memories, and the challenges of parenting. There was a comfort in the familiarity of each other's presence, a quiet reassurance that despite years apart, they still understood each other in ways few others could. During the conversation, Lena reflected on the difference between wealth and human connection. Ethan's billionaire status didn't overshadow the authenticity of his care. In fact, it highlighted how resources could be used thoughtfully to make a positive impact without compromising human values. She appreciated that he had chosen to act in a way that respected her autonomy while providing meaningful support. This realization brought Lena a sense of clarity. Life's value wasn't measured in money but in thoughtfulness, kindness, and the ability to be present for those who mattered. After the meeting, Lena felt a renewed sense of direction. She knew that her life had changed, but she also understood that her core responsibilities remained the same. She would continue to raise Owen with love, care, and attention, now with added resources and a sense of security. She felt empowered to make decisions that aligned with her values, balancing practical needs with emotional well-being. The days that followed were filled with careful planning and reflection. Lena consulted financial advisors, researched ways to make the money sustainable, and explored opportunities to give back. She wanted to ensure that the resources could provide lasting benefits, not just temporary relief. She also spent time strengthening her bond with Owen, cherishing the small moments of play, laughter, and learning that defined their daily lives. These moments reminded her that wealth was a tool, but love, attention, and care were the foundation of a meaningful life. In quiet moments, Lena reflected on the journey so far. A simple mistake, a misdirected text, had led to a profound shift in her life. She realized that life could be unpredictable, that generosity could come in unexpected forms, and that human connection often carried more weight than material resources. She felt grateful not just for the financial support, but for the reminder that kindness and care could manifest in surprising and transformative ways. Through these reflections, Lena also considered the future. She knew that life would continue to present challenges and uncertainties, but she felt equipped to face them with a renewed sense of confidence and hope. The lessons she had learned about resilience, gratitude, and the importance of genuine connection would guide her decisions and shape the life she wanted for Owen. By the end of the week, Lena had established a balance between practical planning and emotional reflection. She had allocated funds for immediate needs, long-term security, and opportunities to give back. She had also nurtured the budding connection with Ethan, recognizing it as a source of support and human understanding, rather than obligation or expectation. She felt grounded, hopeful, and ready to embrace the possibilities that lay ahead. One night, as Lena watched Owen sleep peacefully, she felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The events of the past days had taught her that life could surprise her, that generosity could come from unexpected sources, and that meaningful connections could exist in forms she hadn't anticipated. She felt grateful for the gift, the human connection, and the renewed perspective it had brought. And as she held Owen close, she whispered a promise to herself and to him, that she would use this opportunity wisely, nurture their bond, and cherish the moments that truly mattered. Lena woke up one morning feeling unusually calm. The previous weeks had been a whirlwind of emotions, plans, and reflections, and she finally felt like she had found her footing. With the money secured, the immediate worries for Owen's needs addressed, and her plans for the future beginning to take shape, she was ready to take the next step. That step, she realized, involved meeting Ethan in person again. She wanted to see him, understand him, and ensure that the connection they were developing through messages was as real in life as it was online. After careful thought, Lena suggested a meeting at a small cafe close to her apartment. She chose a neutral place, somewhere safe and public, so that the focus could be on conversation and clarity rather than formality or pressure. She felt nervous but also hopeful. The thought of seeing Ethan again after so many years stirred a mix of emotions: familiarity, curiosity, and a subtle undercurrent of caution. She reminded herself to stay grounded, focusing on Owen's well-being and the clarity of their intentions. When she arrived at the cafe, Lena spotted Ethan waiting at a corner table. He looked different from what she remembered, not in a negative way, but in the quiet confidence and calmness that seemed to accompany him now. He smiled warmly when he saw her, and she returned the smile, feeling a sense of ease she hadn't anticipated. They greeted each other politely, and Lena immediately noticed the thoughtful care in his demeanor. There was no arrogance, no hint of expectation, just a genuine presence that made her feel respected. They began by talking about Owen. Lena shared recent milestones, challenges and small victories, and Ethan listened intently, asking questions and remembering details from previous conversations. He offered advice gently, not in a controlling way, but as someone who had knowledge and wanted to support. Lena felt a mixture of relief and warmth. The conversation felt natural, flowing without awkwardness or pretense. She realized that the foundation of their connection was trust and shared history, enhanced now by understanding and thoughtfulness. As the conversation continued, Lena and Ethan reminisced about the past. They spoke about shared experiences, laughter, and moments that had shaped their relationship. Lena reflected on how different they had both become, yet how certain aspects of their connection remained intact. There was a comfort in remembering the person he had been and the person he had become, and realizing that kindness and care could persist despite time and distance. They also discussed practical matters. Lena asked questions about managing the money, about ways to ensure it would be used responsibly for Owen's needs and future. Ethan shared insights not to dictate but to guide, showing that he trusted her judgment and respected her autonomy. Lena appreciated this balance. It was a reminder that the money wasn't meant to control her life, but to provide opportunities and security. She felt a sense of gratitude that went beyond the financial aspect. It was the thoughtfulness, respect, and human connection that mattered most. After hours of conversation, Lena realized how much clarity this meeting had brought. She felt reassured about Ethan's intentions and her own feelings. She understood that while their relationship was evolving, it didn't need to mirror the past. They could create a new dynamic that was meaningful, supportive, and grounded in reality. Lena felt empowered to navigate this path carefully, prioritizing her own needs and Owen's well-being, while appreciating the positive presence Ethan could offer. Over the next few days, Lena focused on integrating this new perspective into her daily life. She continued to plan and manage the money responsibly, ensuring that bills, necessities, and future savings were addressed. She also spent quality time with Owen, cherishing the moments of laughter, play, and learning that defined their daily routine. These moments reminded her that the true value of life lay not in wealth, but in care, attention, and love. Ethan remained in touch, offering advice and checking in on their progress. His messages reflected a balance of concern and respect, showing that he valued their connection without imposing expectations. Lena appreciated this consistent support, recognizing it as a demonstration of genuine care rather than obligation. She felt a growing sense of trust, knowing that she could rely on him as a resource and a supportive presence without compromising her independence. As Lena reflected on these experiences, she began to consider the broader implications of her situation. She realized that wealth, when used thoughtfully, could enhance life but could not replace the human elements that made it meaningful. She thought about other single parents, families struggling to meet basic needs, and the ways in which resources could be used to create positive change. Inspired by these reflections, she began to explore opportunities to give back, to support others in her community while maintaining her focus on Owen. One afternoon, Lena visited a local community center to learn about programs that assisted single parents. She spoke with coordinators, asked questions, and took notes on how she could contribute meaningfully. The experience reminded her that wealth could be a tool for empowerment, not just for herself but for others. She felt a sense of purpose and fulfillment, understanding that the way she used the money could create ripple effects beyond her immediate life. Throughout this period, Lena also focused on self-care. She understood that raising Owen, managing finances, and navigating new relationships required emotional resilience. She took time to rest, reflect, and recharge, recognizing that her well-being was integral to her ability to care for Owen and make thoughtful decisions. She engaged in small routines that brought her peace, whether reading a book, enjoying a quiet walk, or simply sitting with Owen and observing his curiosity about the world. Lena's relationship with Ethan continued to develop naturally. They met occasionally, spoke regularly, and maintained a connection grounded in honesty, respect, and genuine care. She appreciated that he offered support without pressure, guidance without control, and presence without intrusion. This dynamic allowed Lena to feel confident in her decisions and secure in her parenting, knowing that someone valued and respected her role and efforts. By the end of the month, Lena felt a sense of stability and optimism she hadn't experienced in years. The initial shock of the unexpected money and the misdirected text had evolved into a profound shift in her life. She had secured her immediate needs, laid plans for the future, and cultivated a meaningful connection with Ethan. More importantly, she had reaffirmed her values, her priorities, and her commitment to Owen's well-being. One evening, as Lena sat with Owen playing on the living room floor, she reflected on the journey so far. A simple mistake had led to an unexpected opportunity, and through careful reflection, thoughtful action, and genuine human connection, she had transformed a moment of uncertainty into lasting change. She felt gratitude not only for the resources but for the clarity, trust, and understanding that had emerged. Lena realized that life's unpredictability often brought lessons disguised as challenges. She had learned to embrace uncertainty, recognize genuine care, and navigate complex emotions with mindfulness. She understood that human connections, thoughtfulness, and empathy were as valuable as material resources, and that combining these elements could create a life filled with security, joy, and purpose. As she watched Owen explore the world around him, Lena felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. She knew that challenges would continue to arise, but she felt equipped to handle them with wisdom, patience, and resilience. The journey had taught her that unexpected kindness could transform lives, that relationships could evolve in positive ways, and that opportunities for growth often emerged from the most unlikely circumstances. Lena held Owen close, feeling the warmth of the moment and the promise of a brighter future. She whispered a quiet vow to herself and to him, that she would continue to nurture their life with care, make thoughtful choices, and honor the unexpected gifts and connections that had brought them to this point. In that small, serene moment, Lena felt a sense of hope, stability, and enduring love, a foundation on which she could build a life full of possibility and meaning. Weeks passed, and Lena's life had settled into a rhythm she hadn't known in years. The initial shock of the misdirected text and the sudden influx of money had transformed into a steady sense of stability. She had managed to secure her finances, pay off debts, and provide a safe, comfortable environment for Owen. She no longer worried about the next bottle of formula or the next bill. She could focus on what truly mattered, her son's happiness and her own peace of mind. Evenings in their apartment became moments of calm and connection. Lena would sit on the floor with Owen, building towers with blocks, reading stories, or watching him explore small corners of their home with curiosity. She noticed how much he had grown, not just physically, but emotionally. He was confident, happy, and secure, and she knew that part of that security came from the stability she could now provide. The money had changed their material circumstances, but Lena realized it was her care, attention, and presence that truly shaped Owen's world. Meanwhile, Lena continued her thoughtful communication with Ethan. They met occasionally, their conversations filled with warmth, laughter, and genuine interest. There was no pressure, no expectation beyond the shared care for Owen and the mutual respect they had cultivated. Lena appreciated that their relationship had evolved into something healthy and balanced, where support and understanding were exchanged freely. She felt grateful for this connection, knowing that it complemented her independence rather than challenging it. Lena also began to explore opportunities to give back to her community. Inspired by her own experience, she decided to support other single parents and families in need. She reached out to local organizations, learned about programs that helped provide essentials, and contributed in ways that were meaningful and practical. She found joy in seeing the impact of her efforts, understanding that her own challenges had given her a perspective that allowed her to make a real difference for others. This act of giving brought a new sense of purpose and fulfillment, reminding her that wealth could be used not only to secure comfort, but to create positive change. One afternoon, Lena attended a small community event with Owen. She watched him interact with other children, his laughter ringing out as they played together. She noticed the pride and confidence in his eyes, and it reminded her of why she worked so hard every day. She thought about how far they had come, from moments of worry about basic necessities to a life filled with possibilities, security, and joy. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the journey and the lessons it had taught her. Ethan's continued presence in her life also brought lessons about trust, care, and respect. Lena noticed how his actions matched his words, how he consistently offered thoughtful support without imposing, and how he celebrated Owen's milestones with genuine enthusiasm. She felt reassured that the connection they shared was rooted in authenticity and kindness. This understanding allowed Lena to fully embrace the support she had been given without feeling diminished or indebted. She realized that accepting help didn't weaken her. It allowed her to thrive. Throughout this period, Lena also focused on personal growth. She read, reflected, and practiced self-care, recognizing that her own well-being was essential to being the best parent and person she could be. She experimented with new routines, found ways to manage stress, and nurtured her own interests and passions. She understood that balance was key, not just financial stability, but emotional resilience, meaningful connections, and a life enriched by both love and purpose. As months went by, Lena saw tangible changes in their lives. They moved to a safer, more comfortable apartment, where Owen had space to play and grow. Lena had established a stable routine, balancing work, parenting, and personal time effectively. She felt proud of her ability to manage everything thoughtfully, appreciating how her perseverance, care, and the unexpected help she received had combined to create a life she could feel proud of. Reflecting on the journey, Lena recognized how much she had learned about human connection, generosity, and resilience. The initial misdirected text that had caused panic and anxiety had become the catalyst for profound transformation. She understood that life's unexpected turns could lead to opportunities and connections that were both practical and deeply meaningful. The experience reinforced her belief in the power of empathy, kindness, and thoughtful action. Lena also reflected on her relationship with Ethan. While their connection had begun with a simple gesture of generosity, it had grown into a supportive and respectful bond. She appreciated the balance he maintained, being present and caring without overstepping boundaries. This allowed Lena to maintain her independence while benefiting from genuine support. She realized that trust, respect, and consistency were the foundation of any meaningful relationship, whether romantic, familial, or friendly. In the evenings, Lena often sat quietly with Owen, watching him explore his surroundings and marvel at the world. She felt a sense of fulfillment and peace that had eluded her during the years of struggle. She recognized that her journey had been shaped by both challenges and unexpected kindness, and that each step had taught her resilience, gratitude, and perspective. She felt prepared for whatever challenges might come next, knowing she had the strength, resources, and wisdom to navigate them. The story of Lena's journey became a quiet source of inspiration for those around her. Friends, family, and community members noticed the changes, the confidence, stability, and joy she carried, and were encouraged by her example. Lena shared her experiences when appropriate, emphasizing the importance of perseverance, the value of genuine support, and the impact of thoughtful generosity. She wanted others to understand that life could shift unexpectedly, but resilience and openness to help could transform challenges into opportunities. As time went on, Lena continued to prioritize what mattered most: her son's happiness, her own growth, and the meaningful connections she had cultivated. She maintained her routines, celebrated small victories, and remained mindful of the lessons learned from the unexpected turn of events. She knew that wealth alone could not create fulfillment, but when combined with care, attention, and human connection, it could provide a foundation for a rich and meaningful life. One quiet evening, as Lena watched Owen drift to sleep, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. She thought about the small mistakes, the surprises, the gestures of kindness, and the thoughtful support that had transformed their lives. She felt gratitude for the experiences, for the lessons learned, and for the opportunities that lay ahead. In that moment, Lena felt a sense of completion. Not in the sense that life was perfect, but in the understanding that she had navigated the challenges with resilience, care, and wisdom. She held Owen close, feeling the warmth and love that had defined their journey. She whispered a quiet vow to herself and to him, to continue nurturing their life with thoughtfulness, to embrace opportunities for growth and kindness, and to cherish every moment that truly mattered. Lena understood that life's true value lay in love, connection, and purpose, and she was committed to building a future that reflected these truths. With hope in her heart and determination in her mind, Lena looked forward to the days ahead, ready to face them with strength, gratitude, and unwavering care for the son she loved more than anything. 6 months had passed since that accidental text message changed everything. Jennifer stood in the kitchen of her new townhouse, warm sunlight streaming through windows that actually opened properly. Lily sat in her high chair, giggling and smashing banana pieces with her tiny fists. The formula crisis felt like a lifetime ago, but this morning was different. Today marked the official launch of the Jennifer Hayes Foundation for Single Parents, and her stomach twisted with nerves she hadn't felt since that night at the tech summit. Her phone buzzed. David's name appeared on the screen, and even now, her heart did that little skip it always did. "Running late?" his message read. "Board meeting went long. Be there in 20. She smiled, typing back quickly before Lily could grab the phone. "Take your time. I'm more nervous about this speech than you probably were about your IPO. You'll be amazing. You always are." Jennifer set the phone down and looked around her kitchen. Not mansion fancy, but comfortable. Safe. Hers. Well, technically the foundation's headquarters occupied the ground floor, and she lived upstairs. That had been her idea, her compromise. She'd accepted David's help, but on her terms. The past 6 months had been a whirlwind of lawyers, accountants, and difficult conversations. That first meeting after the summit, they'd sat in a quiet coffee shop for 4 hours just talking. Really talking. David explained how he'd searched for her after his first major funding round, but her mother had passed. She'd moved apartments, changed her phone number. He'd respected her privacy, figuring she'd moved on, built a life without him. "I never forgot what you did for me," he'd said that day, hands wrapped around a coffee cup he barely touched. "Those nights you'd bring me dinner when I was coding until 3 in the morning. The time you paid my rent when I was choosing between that and entering the startup competition. You believed in me when I was nobody," Jennifer had argued, of course. Told him that was what people did when they cared about someone. That she didn't keep score, didn't expect repayment. "I know," David had replied. "That's exactly why I wanted to find you." They'd agreed on a plan that night. Not charity, partnership. Jennifer would run a foundation helping single parents with emergency needs, the kind of crisis she'd faced that desperate night. David would fund it, but she'd control it. Her vision, her rules, her mission. The doorbell rang, pulling Jennifer back to the present. She wiped banana off Lily's face and went to answer it. Mrs. Rodriguez stood there, dressed in her Sunday best despite it being Tuesday. "Ready for your big day, mija?" the older woman asked, stepping inside and immediately reaching for Lily. "Let me take this little angel. You go finish getting ready." "You didn't have to dress up, Mrs. Rodriguez. It's just a small press conference." "Small? Channel 7 is coming. Channel 4 too. My neighbor's daughter works at the newspaper. She says they're sending their best reporter." Mrs. Rodriguez bounced Lily on her hip. "Besides, I want to look good for the cameras. I'm going to tell everyone how I knew you when you were up all night worrying about formula money." Jennifer laughed, feeling some of her nervousness ease. Mrs. Rodriguez had been her rock through everything, even when Jennifer first received that $1 million and didn't know what to do with it. Upstairs, Jennifer changed into the blue dress she'd picked out last week. Not too fancy, not too casual. Professional but approachable. The woman in the mirror looked different from the exhausted pharmacy tech who'd sent that desperate text 6 months ago. She stood straighter now, slept better, smiled more. But the biggest change wasn't visible. It was the feeling that she mattered, that her struggles hadn't been meaningless. Every single parent who'd walked through the foundation's doors would get what she'd needed that night. Immediate help, no judgment, no complicated paperwork. Just human beings helping other human beings survive the hardest moments. Her phone buzzed again. Tommy this time. "Dad would have been so proud of you today, Mom too." "Kick some butt, sis," Jennifer's eyes stung. Her parents had struggled too, worked multiple jobs, went without so she and Tommy could have what they needed. They'd understand this foundation in their bones. A car door slammed outside. Through the window, she watched David climb out of his Tesla, checking his watch. He still dressed simply, she noticed. Nice clothes, but nothing flashy. Some things hadn't changed. She headed downstairs where Mrs. Rodriguez had corralled Lily into a playpen in the office. The small crowd had already started gathering. Local reporters setting up cameras, community members she'd invited personally. People who'd been where she was, who understood. David met her at the door, and for a moment they just looked at each other. "You good?" he asked quietly. "Terrified," she admitted. "Yeah, I remember that feeling before my first big pitch." He smiled, that same slightly crooked smile from their college days. "I was shaking so hard I spilled coffee on my presentation slides. You never told me that story. I was too embarrassed." He glanced at the gathering crowd. "But you know what got me through it? Remembering that someone believed I had something worth saying, someone who'd seen me at my worst and still thought I could do something meaningful." Jennifer's throat tightened. They'd been dancing around the bigger conversation for months now, keeping things professional, focused on the foundation, both of them scared, she suspected, of messing up something that was working. "David," she started, but he shook his head gently. "After," he said. "Do your thing first. Change some lives. Then maybe we can finally talk about us. Us." The word hung in the air, full of possibility and fear and hope. Aisha appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Jennifer, they're ready for you." Jennifer took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked toward the cameras. The crowd quieted as she reached the microphone they'd set up in the foundation's main room. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her notes, but then she looked around at the faces watching her. Mrs. Rodriguez holding Lily, Tommy giving her a thumbs up from the back, David leaning against the wall, arms crossed, that proud smile on his face, and the single parents who'd already received help, who'd come back today to support her. She set her notes aside. 6 months ago, Jennifer began, her voice steadier than she expected. "I was sitting in my apartment at 2 a.m, trying to figure out how to feed my baby. I had 50 cents in my bank account and 3 days until payday. I was a good mom, a hard worker, doing everything right. But sometimes life doesn't care about that. Sometimes you just need help, and you need it right now." The room was absolutely silent. Even Lily had stopped fussing. That night I sent a desperate text message to the wrong person. And that mistake changed my life. But here's what I learned. It shouldn't take a miracle or a billionaire ex-boyfriend to keep a baby fed. It shouldn't take luck. It should just take a community that cares enough to help. She felt the emotion rising in her chest but pushed through it. This foundation exists because I got lucky. But luck shouldn't be required. Dignity shouldn't be a luxury. And no parent should have to feel what I felt that night, wondering if they're failing their child just because they're caught between paychecks. Someone in the crowd started clapping, then another, then everyone. Jennifer's vision blurred with tears, but she was smiling, really smiling. This was right. This mattered.